My name is Justin, and I'm an addict, and thanks to my God, the steps, and the fellowship of other addicts, I am sober, one day at a time, since June 19th, 2015, and for that, I am very grateful. Welcome to the RECO12 speaker meeting. We are an organization whose addictions include alcohol, drugs, lust and sex, food, and gambling, just to name a few. We come together from all places, faiths, and backgrounds to learn the similarities of addiction and to gain tools and hope from others who are walking a similar path. We invite recovering addicts with at least 1 year sobriety and who are actively working their recovery in their respective fellowships to share their experience, strength, and hope on a live Zoom meeting each Friday at noon Central Time for 20 to 25 minutes. Then we, the live audience, get the opportunity to ask questions of the speaker for another 20 to 25 minutes. In order to ask questions, please type them in the Q&A link at the bottom of your Zoom window. Now, if you're hearing this podcast recorded and would like to participate as a live audience member, or if you'd even like to be a guest speaker in a future meeting, please go to www.RECO12, that's RECO12.com, to learn more and submit your email address there to receive weekly invitations or to submit to become a guest speaker. We are scheduling our guest speakers now for February and March of next year, and we're really grateful for that. We have a great lineup coming up. RECO12 is an ad-free service, and we appreciate your help in keeping it that way. We gratefully accept contributions to help cover the cost of the Zoom platform, podcast platform, web hosting, and administrative costs. To contribute, you can go to RECO12.com/support, or you click the link to PayPal in the chat of the live meeting or in the show notes if you're listening to this recorded. When you contribute, please specify the meeting number. This is meeting number 26. If you have also found value in RECO12, please take a moment to go to the podcast platform that you're listening on or that you do listen to and give us a rating and review. It really does help us work our 12th step by carrying the message of recovery to more addicts who suffer. Last week's meeting was with Robert D., and it was powerful. His story and journey in recovery are inspiring. It was entitled Connection, Correction, Direction, and it's well worth your time if you haven't heard it already. Now let's introduce our guest speaker for today, Michelle C., whose topic is Came to Believe in a Power Greater Than Myself. Now here's Michelle in her own words. She said, I'm an alcoholic and have been in recovery since July 30th, 2007. I've been an active member of Alcoholics Anonymous since the beginning of my sobriety. I have a sponsor who has a sponsor, and I work with other women. I've been saved by grace and am grateful to God for giving me a life beyond what I've ever deserved. Take it away, Michelle. The floor is yours.
All right. Hey, everybody. Good afternoon. I am Michelle, and I am an alcoholic. First, I'd like to thank Justin for that introduction, and thank you for asking me to speak. It's always an honor and a privilege to do anything for Alcoholics Anonymous and to carry this message to the still suffering alcoholic. I get super, super nervous. So if you hear it in my voice, eventually I think God kind of takes over at some point and I kind of relax into it because I realize that it's not about me. It's about what God has done through me to help other people in recovery. So I picked this topic. I wasn't sure what I was going to do it on. I was going to do it on honesty, but I saw somebody else had picked that topic not too long ago. And I kind of prayed about it. And I got an email about come to me and I will give you rest. And it's out of another book. And it just really spoke to me because it reminded me of step 2, how I've come to God and I've came to believe in a power greater than myself, which restored me to sanity. And so that's the way that I picked that topic through God's guidance. I'll just share a little bit about what I was like, what happened, and what I'm like today in regards to that. Before I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, my life was a mess. I was a mess. Everything was chaotic and out of control. And really it was my insides that were chaotic and out of control. And I was powerless and my life was absolutely unmanageable. And I was probably an alcoholic from the very beginning. I can remember the first time I drank. I was around 13 at a wedding, and I blacked out. I blacked out, and they had to carry me out of there. And I have a picture still to this day where my parents carrying me out, and my head's on his shoulder and I'm passed out and I'm flicking everybody off because they're talking about me because I had got drunk. And that's pretty much how my drinking career went. It was, I don't care what anybody else thinks because this is what I want to do. And I remember that first drink I felt, it talks about in the big book, a sense of ease and comfort that comes at once by taking a few drinks. And that, it made me feel okay. And that's all I ever wanted to be, growing up. I just wanted to be okay. I wanted to be, at peace. And I didn't know how to be that way. I wasn't given the tools on how to learn how to deal with emotions and how to live life really. And I wasn't a bad childhood that I had, but I just wasn't given, I look back on my parents' history and they didn't have the tools, to give me to learn how to deal with emotions and feelings. Um, I've come through lots of inventory. I've come to have more compassion for them through that. Um, and ever since that first drink, I remember thinking, I gotta figure out how to be able to do this, as often as possible because it made me feel okay. And even the hangover that I had after it didn't matter, and I continued to do that for years. I continued to drink, and there was no social drinking. There was always, once I started to drink, I drank to get drunk. I drank with a purpose. And I didn't know that I didn't learn until I got to Alcoholics Anonymous what that was. It was, it talks about in the big book that alcoholics have an allergy to alcohol. I don't react to alcohol like normal drinkers do. A normal drinker, and I heard this, everything that I say, anything spiritual or, wisdom that I share here, I've learned from other people. It's not something that I came up all on my own. I'm just here to share my experience, strength, and hope. And, and I heard somebody say in a meeting one time, like he compared a normal drinker to the alcoholic. And he said a normal drinker will have one or two drinks, they get slightly buzzed, and then they stop drinking. But an alcoholic, once they start drinking, this allergy kicks in, and they usually they don't stop until they black out or, get to that place of, for myself, was oblivion, And I've always drank with a purpose. I didn't see a point in having one or two drinks. And I continued to do that throughout high school. And it was a miracle that I graduated. I missed so much school that we got a doctor to write an excuse for allergies. He said I had allergies. It wasn't until I was sharing my story one day that I realized just how true that was. I had an allergy to alcohol that, and I had this obsession of the mind that would tell me next time it'll be different. Next time I won't drink so much. Next time, and I used to try to control my drinking and think, if was it the fifth drink that got me drunk or, which drink it was that would cause me to black out. And, and they're just, again, it was like, once I started drinking, it just didn't matter. It just didn't matter. And, and I did that for years. And then, I ended up getting into outside issues and I got really bad off on that. I'm not going to go into that a whole lot because of the traditions. I'm here to share my experience with AA. So, but I can tell you that I reached a bottom with that. And I started going to meetings. I didn't want to go to AA meetings because I was afraid that if I went to AA meetings, I'd have to stop drinking too. And I wasn't ready to do that. I would go to these other meetings and I'd say, and they used to say, alcohol is a drug. And I'd be like, oh, I keep saying that because I wanted to drink. It was the only thing that had ever gave me that sense of ease and comfort. It was my solution. It wasn't my problem. It was my solution. And it wasn't until I got to Alcoholics Anonymous and worked the steps and got a sponsor and then worked the steps that I realized what my problem was. It was the selfishness and self-centeredness. That was the root of my troubles. And I was driven by fear, and alcohol gave me release from that. And so I was afraid to quit drinking because I didn't know what else I was going to do. What was I going to do on a Friday night if I couldn't drink? What was I going to do if I broke up with my boyfriend and I couldn't drink? And, I had all these fears and then until, one morning, And I did that for about a year and a half. I went to meetings, and not AA meetings, but I tried to control my drinking. And I don't know, for whatever reason, one morning I woke up and I said, God, please help me, because I can't live this way anymore. And at that point, I decided that I would try to quit drinking. And I didn't tell anybody, because I didn't want them to have expectations that, if I drank again, then they were going to say, well, you said you wouldn't drink. And I didn't want to have to deal with it. So I kind of made you know, I kind of came up in my mind. I was like, I'll try this program. And I had started working with this one gentleman. He was an older guy, because there weren't a lot of women sober in the meeting that I was going to. And he said, why don't you try it for a year and give it, when it says write, when it says pray, do what it says, but really put some effort into it. And if you don't like the results after a year, you can always go back to doing what you were doing before. What have you got to lose? And at that point in my life, I had nothing to lose except fear and guilt and shame and remorse from all the things I had done, over my drinking career. And so I decided I'd try it. And so I did. And sorry, I'm looking at my watch only to make sure I'm good on time. So I decided I would try it. And so about a month and a half into it, I remember I was dating this guy, and he was alcoholic too. And he was going out, and I was like, I'm going out too. I don't care. And my motives for going were all wrong. And I went out, and I had kind of committed to the program, but not really 100%. And I went out, and I remember somebody passed something my way, and, in that strange mental blank spot that it talks about in our big book, I took it, and I tortured myself for the next 30 days, because it was prescribed, but it wasn't prescribed to me. Was it really a relapse? And then I just came to the point where I realized that if I didn't count that one, I wasn't going to count the next one. And so I redid my sobriety date, which is July 30th, 2007. And I jumped in with both feet, head first. And I found a woman sponsor, and she took me through the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and we started working those steps. And, I came to believe in a power greater than myself. At first, I wasn't sure what that power was. And I kind of read step 2 in the 12 and 12 yesterday, and We Agnostics in the big book yesterday, to kind of prepare myself a little bit. And, and it talks about laying aside prejudice, a lot in We Agnostic, and we beg of you to lay aside the prejudice. And the way that I did that at the beginning was, my sponsor had me, after we talked about what step 1 was, I'm powerless over alcohol. My life is unmanageable. Which means I have the allergy and the obsession. And step 2, it's restore me to sanity, soundness of mind. It talks about in the 12 and 12. And, that's in regards to alcohol in the beginning. And that happened for me. God just removed the obsession, to have that drink. And so I started working those steps. And when we got to step 2, she had me draw a line down the middle of a paper, and on one side to write some ideas I had about God. God was a punishing God. He was, not forgiving. And, he was very far out there in the universe. He had a big world to take care of. And why would he have anything to do with me? And on the right side, she said, why don't you write your ideas on what you want your God to be? Loving, kind, caring, forgiving, not punishing. And so when we went over that, she had me rip it in half and said, now, this is your idea. Start there, start there. And I thought, oh my God, I can do that. I can just choose my own conception of whatever I want my God to be. And she said, yeah. And then, I remember for a long time, like when we got to step 3, it was turn our will and our lives over to, wait, I can't quote it right now because I'm kind of all over the place and I'm still nervous. But turning my will and my life over to God as I understand him. And I remember thinking, like, what's God's will for me? Is it this or is it this? Is it to work here? Is it to do this or is it to do that? And, and I got really crazy and trying to figure out what God's will for me was. And And I heard a speaker say one day, why don't you just, step 3 is I make a commitment to follow through with the rest of the steps. Like, keep it simple. And when I did that, it like took all the pressure off of trying to figure out what God's will was for me. And slowly over time, like I've grown and I've changed, and my relationship with God has become different over the years. And I that first year was a struggle. I can remember wanting to crawl out of my own skin for a long time, even going to meetings and working the steps. And I started working with others. And then the second year of sobriety, things got better and I got better, and my perception on life started to change. And I committed to doing, the rest of the steps, and my belief started to grow and change in God. And um, I want to share a little bit about what kind of happened in my sobriety over the years, because 13 years is a long time to, not really, but for me it has been. Um, when I was 2 years sober, I always cry when I get to this point. My daughter had a 7. She was 7 when I got sober, so at this time she was 9. She was diagnosed with cancer, and it rocked my world, because I had felt like I was doing the right thing and I was showing up, and like something this tragic happened in my life to my daughter. I was trying to be a good mom, and she got sick, and then she had to go through 2.5 years of treatment for that cancer. And thank God today she's well and has been cancer free over 10 years. But that 2.5 years was a long time to watch my daughter have to go through that. And then I got really, really angry at God for a while, because I just couldn't fathom, you know, doing the right thing and trying to raise my kid. And now she has cancer. And, I had all these beliefs that I had to start taking a look at. And I remember calling my sponsor one day crying, and I was like, I had wanted to quit AA, because I felt like I was kind of bargaining with God, like, here I am doing the right thing and this happens. And so, like, I didn't want to work with people anymore. I didn't want to go to AA. And I called her and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm just in too much pain, and I couldn't see past my own pain. And she said, that's okay, honey. You don't have to want to do it. You just have to do it. And I took her advice and I just kept doing it anyway. And what happened for me was I came to believe that, through working the steps again, and I put God on the resentment list, and he didn't strike me dead. I'm still here. you know, I but I came to believe in a God who's big enough to take my anger. He's big enough to understand that what I was going through was painful, and it was okay to feel that way. And I heard a speaker say one day, why do people get cancer? Because we live in a world that's polluted. Things happen, and today I don't believe in a God who gives kids cancer. Today I believe that things happen in life because we live in a fallen world, and the world's polluted, and people get cancer. It wasn't God's fault. Um, I also came to believe that, thank God got me sober when he did, because she was going to get cancer whether I was sober or not. And thank God I was sober with 2 years of sobriety in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous, to be able to have a solution and not have to drink over what happened, not have to drink through that. And I was able to show up for my kid and bring her to those appointments, because before sobriety, I wasn't one to give medicine. You take it till you feel better and then you stop taking it. I wasn't one to show up for appointments, and she never missed a doctor's appointment, and she never missed a medication. And I stayed in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I continue to work with people, and I came to believe in a loving God again, and then we moved through that, and she got better, and she became cancer free. And then a few years went by, and then one day my dad got sick. He had a stroke, and I worked for him for since I was in high school. I worked for him, and one day I drove home, and he had I couldn't get in touch with him, and when I got there, he was unresponsive, and for months he was in the hospital, and we didn't know if he was going to make it out of there. And And because of Alcoholics Anonymous, again, I was able to show up to those appointments and be there for him and help him he ended up recovering. He had this miraculous recovery, and then I took him in, and I was his caregiver for 2.5 years. And I was able to bring him to his appointments and take care of his needs and make sure he was fed and clothed. And and because of this program and because of this process, before I got sober, like I said, I worked for him. He had a small business, and I stole over $10,000 from him. And when I got sober, I made amends to him, and I paid all that back. And and he's recently passed away. He passed away in September, and now I'm having to walk through that sober and have experiences that I never had before. And to grieve his loss. And today I own that business. He handed that business over to me, because I was sober, and because I was, the spiritual life, it says in our big book, is not a theory. We have to live it. And because I've been living this program, I've been given the grace to be able to walk through a lot of things sober. And I think that everybody gets the grace. It's, do we accept it or not? I'm just so grateful that God brought me to this program, and that I've had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. And I continue to try to carry this message to other people and give hope, because before I got here, I couldn't imagine my life without alcohol. And today I can't imagine my life without Alcoholics Anonymous and the people. I have friends today I have that I can count on, and they know everything about me. My sponsor knows everything about me. And if she doesn't, it's only because I forgot to tell her, but I will tell her if I remember, I, another thing that's helped me to stay here and stay in recovery is always being honest about where I am and what's going on with me and what my thoughts are. And because just a few weeks ago, the obsession to drink has been removed, but I've still had thoughts. Like, I was standing in line at the grocery store the other day, and grieving the loss of my dad has been one of the hardest things that I've done. And especially since he lives with, not that it's not hard for people, who haven't taken him in, but he was there every day, for 2.5 years. I had him with me, and, worked for him since I was in high school. And, and I was standing in line at this store, and I looked up and I saw a bottle of Crown Royal, and I thought, if I drink that, I don't have to feel this way. And I thought, ooh, that's not a good thought. And because I have women in my life that I trust, that, I call my sponsor and I was like, oh my God, here's what I just thought. And I got accountable, and I told her what I thought, and I didn't have to buy that bottle, because God keeps me safe and protected. And like I said, I've come to believe that God will help me to get through anything, the death of a parent, the sickness of a child, and, whatever your problems are, there are people who have had them too, that, or have found recovery and have found, it says in our big book, it's a design for a living that works. And that's what this program has given me, is a way of living that helps me to walk through the trials in low spots, through work and self-sacrifice for others, and growing in God consciousness. And I just I can never ever repay the people in these rooms for what they've done for me, or to God what He's done for me. And I have a life that, on most days, I have a good life, and I didn't think that way before I got sober. It was every day there were a lot of days I wanted to die. And even in recovery, I can remember at around 8 years, I had stopped doing, I stayed active a little, doing some of the steps, but I wasn't really committed. And I was, you know, Netflixing it out, and, finding us laying on the couch, not really doing what I was supposed to be doing in recovery. And I got to a place where I wanted to die again. And then I had heard a friend of mine had picked up her chip, and her sponsor said she always does step 10, and so I called her a few days. I was like, can I start doing that with you? And so like I started being more involved, and through doing that I had a whole nother spiritual awakening. And and it's just such a process and a journey of falling asleep and waking back up again. We have a spiritual awakening, which I don't know what the word I'm trying to think of implies, that we were spiritually asleep. And so that happens sometimes. And because I've surrounded myself with people who know me and know, most of the time what's going on for me, when I fall back asleep, I feel that God keeps me safe and protected, because he guides me where I need to be reawakened. And for that, I am truly, truly grateful. And I think that probably is my time. It's 12:27. Is that good? Okay. All right.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michelle. Some great, great story. Thank you for being willing to share that story with us. Before we get to the Q&A, I'd like to turn a little bit of time to you just to talk a little bit about the fellowship you attend, Alcoholics Anonymous, and how it really benefits you. I know you've talked about that a lot during this share, but discuss a little bit about how that helps you. And maybe somebody who's listening might go, that might be the fellowship that I need to go look at and get involved with.
Okay. So we have the book Alcoholics Anonymous, which is where the recovery program is, the 12 steps. It gives clear-cut directions on how to work the steps in the big book. And then we have the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous and it says in the book that we meet frequently so the newcomer can find the fellowship that they crave. And to me, that's what this is. It's a substitute for the drinking. It gives us camaraderie and fellowship and love and acceptance. And I've talked to a few people who have not had that experience. But to me, if I keep praying and asking God to lead me to the people that I need to be surrounded by, then I find that fellowship. And like I said, when I was talking, it's a design for living. It just gives us a way of life to be able to walk through anything. And it's given me a life beyond my wildest dreams, when I never thought I could have or deserved. And I'm grateful for it.
Awesome. Thank you, Michelle. All right. It's now time for our guest speaker to answer your questions. Reminder that if you have any questions, please type them in the Q&A link at the bottom of your Zoom window. We'll get to those as they come in. I've also written a couple of questions down here as shared that I think that I'm very interested to hear a little bit more information on that. So I'll go ahead and ask you this first question. Michelle, one of the things that you mentioned and talked about was when your daughter got sick and how you became angry at God and even put him on your resentments list. How does one, especially early, I mean, you were fairly early in your sobriety, about 2 years in, but how does one stay sober when tragedy strikes and not give up? I know that, and at the same time, have those real feelings of resentment that may come up towards God. How do you stay sober then?
Oh, God keeps me sober. That's I just taking the actions even when I didn't want to. I just staying accountable, staying honest, calling people. I can remember sitting in the meetings. I actually didn't share it with my sponsor first. Had a friend I was talking to, and I was like, I'm done with AA. I'm not going back. And she's like, oh, honey, have you talked to your sponsor about that? And I was like, I will. I'm going to tell her. And, and it's funny to see myself, like looking back, it's almost humorous. Like I was this little, it talked about in the 12 and 12, this greedy child making a list for Santa Claus. It's like trying to, just doing it when I didn't want to. And slowly what happened was I wanted to again, because I saw the results. I praying, meditating, I actually sought a counselor. I got a counselor. I did. The book says we can seek outside help. I got a counselor, and I took care of myself too. And I went to the doctor to make sure I was okay. And tried to stay healthy enough to take care of her too, Does that answer your question?
Thank you very much. I love the answer there. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. You also talked about God removing the obsession and it being a miraculous type situation, but you were still felt like you were crawling out of your skin for a little while in that first year, even after the obsession was removed. At least that's how the order of how you presented it. How does that look for people? Does it look about the same for everybody, that the obsession is relieved, but still kind of struggle with some things? Or tell me about your experience for yourself and maybe some experiences that you've observed with people that you've worked with.
I don't know about everyone. I do know that for me, that's what happened. I've heard people share that they felt like the thoughts were still there. From the way that I understand the big book, when the obsession occurs, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what else like. I'm just gonna go drink, So my understanding is that it seems as though if you're in an AA meeting and you're not drinking, the obsession is not there at that time. It's mostly just thoughts. But if I keep the thoughts and I don't share them, then they can become the obsession again. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. We got a comment that came in, and this is just to pump you up, I think. So I'll share it with you. It's from Tessie. She says, "Thank you for being a light in my life. You are an amazing person and a great friend and sponsor." So she wanted to say that to you. And then we've got one from Heather, a question. "Thank you for your share, Michelle. I relate to your story. I struggle with connection. How do you stay connected to others and to God?"
So about a year ago, so my current experience is the way that I stay connected to God is through two-way prayer. About a year ago, I had listened to, he was actually a speaker that you had on, Father Bill, and he speaks a lot on two-way prayer, and it's a practice where I write to God and then I listen. He addresses me as my dear one or my dear child, and I listen back and I get some great feedback from him. And then to stay connected to other, and I recently started I committed to meditating, learning how to meditate. I haven't always done that in my sobriety. I've always kind of prayed and talked to God and journaled, but really specifically the last year, listening back to God, from God, and um, committing to meditating in the morning for at least 10 minutes. I've been listening to these guided meditations that gets me centered and connected, and paying attention to my breath sometimes helps bringing myself back to the moment. Another way that for other people, I just reaching out, picking up the phone and calling and saying, "Hey, let's go have coffee, or let's go to a meeting, or, here's what's going on in my life." Just, that 1,000-pound phone, even when I don't want to pick it up, I pick it anyway. And also, because this is not an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting specifically, I'll share that I also listen to Christian music. To me, it's worship, and I there are a lot of songs, even if you have certain ideas about certain things, specifically, like they have some just about God. And me and God jam out in the car a lot. I sing at the top of my lungs. There's a few specific songs, and you can give out my information if anybody wants to know which songs have helped me. But I listen to them on repeat, and they bring me to tears a lot of times. That just really saying those words to God, I don't know, it keeps me connected.
Awesome. And what I'll do is I'll put my email address in the show notes and in the chat here. And if anybody wants to reach out to you, I can connect through that.
Sure.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Michelle. Another question that I have here. You talked about your sponsor knowing everything about you. And if she doesn't, it's you forgot to share, and you'll share if it ever comes up. Have you ever had a fear before recovery, or even in the beginning of your recovery journal, that if somebody knew everything about you, that they would hate you and think you were the most evil person ever and never accept you.
Absolutely.
And how has that changed over time?
I felt that way about myself. I absolutely, I was afraid. That was, and we talk about in the fourth step doing, principle institutions or principles. And my sponsor has this principle inventory that we do. And, one of my beliefs at the beginning was don't ever trust anybody. Because that was what my mom used to tell me growing up. My dad had an affair and with a friend of hers, and like she'd say that she was like, "Don't ever trust anyone, not even your best friend." And so when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, that was like I didn't want to trust anybody, but I was given that gift of desperation. Alcohol beat me into a state of reasonableness, and I didn't want. And I didn't even, like I had said, I didn't even know if I wanted to get sober. What really drove me was I didn't want to feel the way that I felt anymore. So I was willing to do whatever those steps said, whether I trusted my sponsor or not in the beginning, because I just, a part of me just wanted something different, and so I did it. And I've changed sponsors over the years. I've gotten a few different sponsors, and I've gotten different things from different ones. And I believe that I was where I was when I needed to be where I needed to be. I don't judge that. It just is what it is. And yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and I'm going to go up on that. Now that you sponsor others, when somebody does their fourth, fifth, and they unload everything on you, have you ever had somebody that you're like, whoa, now that I know that, I don't love that person anymore? Or has
Never.
it been a growing of love in those situations?
Absolutely a growing of love. I've never felt like, oh my God, that's just where you draw the line at, almost probably 99% of the time, what happens is, oh my God, I did that too. And I share my inventory with the girls that I work with because I've been there, done that, and it helps them to open up more and realize they're not so alone. And I think it's a really important to keep a confidence and not share any of those things that people have shared with me. And the good thing is I think God almost removes them from me, so I don't even remember them to share. Until something comes up with that person again. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. And then we work through that if we have to work through that again.
Yeah, I had a similar thing happen this last week. I did a step 4, step 5 with one of my sponsees, and one of the things he shared brought something back to my memory so he could feel like he wasn't alone. And it's a beautiful thing to go through that. Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate it. That I have come to know that in sharing my story with people who love me, who I know love me, and I know will keep confidence, just relieves me of that shame and burden and grief and shame and burden, really what it is, and guilt that I had before. And it's a beautiful thing. All right. We have another comment here from Eileen. She says, I have other addictions and did not believe I was an alcoholic. I was insane and kept asking her and other women, I gamble and I love a specific drug. Oh, so this is kind of about you. And Michelle would tell me she loved me and just keep coming back. And like she said, I became willing and plugged into AA and came to understand alcoholism, and through the steps, fellowship, and good sponsorship, the obsession to drink, use, and gamble was removed through God's grace. What a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that, Eileen. Do you have any comments on that, Michelle?
Thank you, Eileen. Yeah, I mean, that's just how it works. We share our experience, strength, and hope, and just keep showing up. And great events will see to it that your relationship with Him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and countless others. That's a promise in the Big Book, and that's certainly what has happened for me and many others that walk this journey.
Thank you. All right, I have one more question. If there's any other questions from the audience, please type those in the Q&A. So we can get to those here in the time that I'm asking this question. But my one more question, Michelle, towards the beginning of your talk, you talked about how you would drink with a purpose. What was that purpose, and what could those purposes be that one would drink or drug or whatever their primary addiction would be? What would those purposes be, do you think?
Oh, I can find any excuse to drink. I mean, when I say that, I just mean that in my mind, before I got to Alcoholics Anonymous and didn't know about the allergy of the body, it was whatever came to mind excuse to drink, or do whatever. It's most of the time it was because I didn't want to feel the way that I felt in the moment, and which can still affect me still today. Like I'm having some other, like when my dad died, I started to like, when I had the thought about the drinking, I ate a bag of Oreos instead. It's like, I don't like the way that I feel. I want to feel different. So I'll use this to escape. Is, but really, I don't need a reason. I never needed a reason to drink. But learning, it wasn't until I was about 8 years sober where I really started to learn that I needed to to be able to deal with my emotions and know that whatever I was feeling, it was okay to feel that way. Um, because I've learned different things at different times. In the beginning, it didn't matter how you felt, it mattered what you did. And that was true in the beginning. I needed to take the actions no matter how I felt. The longer I stay here, the more I realize that I sometimes need to take a look at those beliefs and those feelings. And I used to think I was told feelings aren't facts, they lie to you. And I went to a counselor and she said, feelings are feelings. It's the belief that we have behind the feeling is usually the lie. And so it's like taking a look at whatever lie, my first sponsor said our alcoholism is the lies we tell ourselves. So it's like uncovering these truths and these lies, and I'm unable to see that sometimes on my own, but working the steps has allowed me to learn how to be okay even when I'm not okay, and deal with whatever's going on in the present moment.
I really appreciate that. And Michelle, I love these things like you just shared. Hey, at about 8 years sober, I learned this next lesson. And I've heard people at 20 years sober, I learned this next lesson that launched me into the next fourth dimension of recovery. And I think that's a huge witness to share to those who are, hey, I'm a year sober, I'm good to go. Man, at 1 year sober, we still don't have a clue. And yet here we are. And I can say this, I'm gratefully about 5.5 years sober, and I'm in kindergarten, man. I know nothing. And I'm grateful to hear from people like you and others who say, hey, at 8 years sober, 20 years sober, 30 years sober, I learned this next thing. There's still so much to look forward to. And it's not a burden to look forward to that. It's a relief. Do you have any other words of wisdom that you would like to share with us before we close down?
Just keep well, I'm not going to say keep coming back. If you're here and you're in meetings, stay. Don't go anywhere. The miracle happens. We just have to keep taking the next indicated step. I recently heard a mentor say, take the next guided step. I really liked that. And there's hope. There's hope. If anything, please take away that there is hope, that you don't have to continue to live in fear and pain and misery all alone, that if you just come and stay, and you'll come to believe in a power that greater than yourself that will restore you to sanity in different areas of your life. It doesn't have to be just alcohol. For me, it's I'm coming to be awakened with, I can't eat a whole bag of Oreos and be okay. Like I need to see God more in certain areas than, and just accepting where I am is where I am, and be gentle and kind to yourself, because I was my own worst critic. That's another lesson I've been learning, is to be kind and gentle, and it's okay. There's nothing wrong. I recently talked to a lady. There's nothing wrong here. Like, it's okay. It's okay. Everything's okay.
Thank you so much, Michelle. That was a great RECO12 weekly speaker meeting for all addicts and those wanting to learn more about addiction and the recovery therefrom. If you found value in this or other RECO12 speaker meetings, please take a moment to get to the podcast platform of your choosing and leave a rating and review. once again, it really helps us work our 12th step by carrying the message of recovery to more addicts who suffer. If you have other questions or you'd like to reach out at some other way, please go to RECO12.com/forum and join in our community and ask those questions and answer others' questions that may come up. I invite the audience to come back next week. Our speaker next week will be Antonella. She is a member of SLAA, and her topic will be steps 10, 11, and 12, living in the solution. Now, once again, if you've not yet gone to RECO12.com and submitted your email address to get on the weekly email list to get links to these meetings, I invite you to do so. Whether you can join us live or not, you can get more information and know what's coming up in the next podcast that comes out. Now, Michelle has asked us to launch off into the day with the Lord's Prayer, and she's offered to say that. So, Michelle, the floor is back to you to send us off with the Lord's Prayer.
Okay. Thank you again for having me, and thank you everyone who joined and listened. And our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Amen. Keep coming back, everybody. It works when you work it. So work it. You are worth it. Thank you so much, Michelle. Have a great day.
You too. Thanks.
Standing still a moment, carving out this time, reflecting on the landscape of this life of